I'm here right now with, of course, still Eric, and for the first time in a really long time on the channel, it's Aaron Dicer. Aaron, welcome back. It's so good to see you.
Great to be back.
Aaron Dicer back to the channel and practically from the dead. As I mentioned on the channel a couple weeks ago, Aaron had a massive health scare recently, and he's okay. Yeah. He's here. There's the proof. He's all right. Yeah. Aaron, I'm so glad you're okay, and I'm so good to see you, buddy. I'm so glad to see you.
I am glad I'm okay too. I am in the camp of people who is glad that I'm okay. I don't remember as much of it as the people around me do, but yeah, apparently my heart stopped beating for no particular reason. They couldn't find a reason, and so I was in a coma for a couple days while they figured it out. And so yeah, good times. Nice to be back amongst the living.
Yeah, I hope you didn't mind that I brought it up, but I mentioned it when we recorded because at the time you had just woken up and we were hoping you were okay.
Yeah, I specifically said last time you will not be here on the next show.
We announced Aaron. There's no way Aaron will be here. Here he is, more than a trooper. Oh my goodness. So
I'm an overachiever.
We are finally back doing Who Reviews the Reviewers. It's been a long time since we've done this particular segment, and we are into season 5. And we started this just a year into the channel, I think 2010. So we've been on for almost 10 years, and this is our 5th season. So that tells you how long it's been since we've done this, and how long a couple of those seasons took to shoot. But we're back with a different format. What we're doing this time, if you haven't heard about this yet, is we're allowing practically anybody on the planet to enter for each challenge. And with the exception of people who have fewer subscribers than we currently do, folks that have won the contest before. So Aaron, I'm sorry, but you're ineligible.
Oh, man.
And also anybody who has already won this year, which at the moment is no one because this is round 1. So instead of a competitive, I mean, it is competitive, but instead of the kind of reality TV show format that we usually do, where we have a group of people that compete the entire time, you can enter anytime you want to if you really like the challenge idea. But I would suggest that folks that really want to try to do this and try to earn the cash prize at the end, and I haven't, by the way, announced a dollar amount yet, because I haven't decided what that's going to be, but it's going to be at least a couple $100. But if you want to try to do that, I would suggest enter every time you have the opportunity to. We're going to do 6 of these, assuming that it goes well and we continue to get entries. Now, I do have to say, we had enough to work with this time, but we didn't get a whole lot of entries this time compared to previous seasons. And I imagine some of that's because of the format, and some of it might have been because of the particular challenge. Hopefully, some folks like the next one even better than this one. But anyway, so we really encourage people to try out for this. We want to hear from a lot of different people and see a lot of different kinds of reviews. I also suspect that some of that might be because and I wanted to mention this again for folks that don't know about the contest. Some of that might have also been because we're not allowing people to use stills and licensed stills, licensed footage, and licensed music this time, just because we're getting copyright flagged up the woozah with things that we've posted in the past, and we want to make sure that people can see our stuff and your stuff. So that's why we have to do it that way. And so if you're used to really relying on that, I'm sorry about that. But all you have to do is make a really great review in a kind of more lean, minimal format, and then entice people to come over and see your channel where you're using all the bells and whistles. I should also mention that that does not preclude you from using titles or from using music that is not licensed. It's okay to have some production value. You just can't use anything currently that is licensed. So anyway, we voted and I came up with our top 3 for this challenge. And the challenge was to review a movie that you had never seen before. Somebody made fun of me for this. They were like, was that a typo when you said that you've never seen before? How are we supposed to review it if we've never seen it? Yeah, so that's what we meant there. From the year you were born, a 5-minute review. We're going to show you 3 reviews today, and we're going to pick our favorite of those 3, and that person will go to the top banana bunch. That will be the top banana for this week, and then they'll go this month, I should say, and then they'll go to the top banana bunch. That'll be eventually 6 contestants that will all vie for a cash prize. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. we're going to show you guys the first video, and then we're going to chat about it a little bit, and then we'll move on to the other two. The first one comes from Jeffrey Patrone, and he reviewed a film called I Shot Andy Warhol. And Aaron, do you have the years written down? Because I forgot to write the years down.
No, I didn't write the years down. No.
When each of these people was born. So it'll be in the video anyway. So you
impressed me every time one of them said when they were born. So I tried to avoid it as much as possible.
I also had that. Eric immediately after he watched these sent me a message, and he said, "Are you having what I'm having, where all of these people are really young this time?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's definitely the youngest group."
And if I think that, you must think they're really young.
Yeah, especially because there are a couple that are close to your age.
That's true. Like, I think there's a 93 or 94.
There's a 93 and 94.
That's not too far from me.
Yeah. So anyway,
feels young.
Here comes Jeffrey Patrone's review of the biopic I Shot Andy Warhol. And Jeffrey did not shoot Andy Warhol. He just reviewed a movie because, he wouldn't have been alive yet. Anyway, and he's not a murderer. Anyway, here comes Jeffrey's video.
Jeffrey Patrone. I'm here to do a review of the 1996 film I Shot Andy Warhol by Mary Herron. Now, the film stars Lily Tyler as Valerie Solanas, the woman who attempted to kill Andy Warhol, as well as Jared Harris, who plays Andy Warhol, amongst a horde of other actresses, including Martha Plimpton and Michael Imperioli. Now, what the film does well, just to start off, is it centers around a very distinct time in the 1960s in New York City, and it captures that time very well. It's not the beats, and it's not quite the psychedelic period. It's a mix of both, but in a way it's the rejected afterbirth of those two. You have a somewhat representation of the White Panther Party. You have the feeling that, this was the 60s, but things are turning south. And the film does a great job of illustrating that. The film does a great job of putting you in the headspace of what the Andy Warhol entourage was like, even at its most boring. And the film does a great job of getting you into the head of Valerie Solanas in the lead up to the assassination attempt. Now, what the film does bad is it's not just the structure of the film is somewhat upsetting to me. And I can't quite put it into words, but it all somewhat stems from a singular issue I have with the film. Technically, the film is not based, you can't really say this film was based on, you can say it was based on true events, and you can say it was inspired by da-da-da-da, but you can't really, say it was based on this day at this time this thing happened, and then expect, well, where did you get the other events, where did they come from? And where a lot of this film stems from, theoretically, and what the film is technically based on, is a book that compiles the diary and notebook writings of an individual known as Candy Darling. Candy Darling was a transvestite who lived in New York City at the time of these events. She died in 1973 after a failed hormone treatment, I believe. And she was a very crucial figure in the Warhol scene, but she was also the figure that introduced Solanas to Warhol. And the film, if you're going that route, should be about her as much as it is about Warhol, and as much as it is about Solanas, but it just isn't. And there's a scene towards the end of the film when Solanas just beats Candy Darling for being just like, you're not even a woman, and just starts hitting her, and it's just this uncomfortable thing, and there's a lot of uncomfortable elements to the film that both make the film an interesting watch, but also feels like we're dancing on the graves of people. It feels like we're profiting from these horrible events in ways that we really shouldn't. But to really just finish this review out, I think the music in this film is the saving grace. If you have the availability to not watch it on YouTube, but you have the chance to find a copy of this, although for some reason they tend to be a little more expensive than the average random obscure movie from the 90s, get it. And if you have the chance, listen to the soundtrack by a variety of artists, including R.E.M., Wilco, and an original score by John Cale that might just be the greatest thing ever. Overall, it's the most painful 7 out of 10 you could ever give a movie. But that's about it. My name is Jeffrey Patrone, and that's it.
Okay, Aaron, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I think for me, one thing you're going to hear from me about most of these reviews, and indeed it was kind of a theme as I watched all of the entries, and something to keep in mind for people, especially when you're limiting your ability to have video stills or those kind of things, is structure. It's something that's just not instinct for a lot of people to understand. Okay, if I give my audience the ability to grab onto some structure, they'll be with me more and they'll understand me better. And that's one of the main things I felt about this video, is there wasn't a lot of great structure to it. He seemed to jump in right to what he thought the movie did well, and then he also would kind of jump out into what it did bad. And he used, I thought, needlessly kind of confusing phrases. At one point he said, "It's upsetting, and I can't put it into words." Well, then why are you talking to me if you can't actually put it into words? Like, there's just these moments where he questioned himself. He seemed to really be hung up with this movie on the ethics of the movie, on it, whether it being a true story or not a true story. I'm not saying that's not valuable. What I'm saying at the end of the day is it doesn't help me understand if I'm going to enjoy watching this movie. It may help me understand a little bit more of where the movie comes from. But that was my overall negative with kind of the review that he gave. Was I got to the end of it, and I think he even gave a score, 7 out of 10, and I had no clue why he felt that way overall. And even more importantly, no clue how that would impact how I would feel about this movie. So I got the tentative end of the review going, I don't know if I want to see this movie or not. I just don't have enough information, to know that. On the positive side, I found him engaging. I found that he was well-spoken and communicated well. I think a little more structure would have helped him quite a bit. And I think it would have helped him zone in on the things that people want to know about a movie so they can make those decisions.
Eric, do you agree with that? Let me ask you let me ask you this. Does it always bug you if somebody says, "I can't put that into words"? If this is a thing I can't articulate, but I felt strongly about it, is that ever valid? Is that ever an okay thing?
No, I think sometimes that's valid when you're trying to explain the experience of what it is. Like I could say that about seeing the first Avengers. Like, I can't exactly put into words what I felt, kind of a thing.
Well, and we're having that, we're talking about Power Rangers on the Omnibus tonight. We're having that with the latest incarnation. There's this spark with that show that is missing. We just can't entirely tell you what it is.
2 weeks being like, what is it that doesn't work?
We can't. But I think Aaron's right that there might be there might be a lack of purpose I articulated here, where we're like that's maybe more valid if we've all seen it and we're all kind of talking about, or he's talking to an audience of people that have all seen it. But I'm with Aaron. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with that when I've not seen the film. And is the purpose of this to analyze a movie that's for an audience that's all seen it, or is the purpose to tell me whether or not I should go see it? And generally, with a 5-minute review, I would go with the former. But at the very least, regardless of the length of the review, you should let me know up front what the purpose is of the film.
Yeah, and I would, if I was going to use a phrase like that, I wouldn't use it in a 5-minute review, or that would be the header. Is I unfortunately, I can't really explain how I felt about this. I'm going to do my best. I would lead with that, and then do my best to explain.
And then maybe that's not the best choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also a difference between explaining that you're struggling with something and struggling with conceptualizing something versus saying, I don't know how to say this, and then trying to say it. You know, it's actually, honestly, it's a fairly minor point for the whole thing. It was just something that stood out to me. And he's not alone in that. I saw in a lot of the reviews, there is a nature of questioning yourself that seems to be, maybe it's a modern review thing where it's, I don't know how I feel about this, but maybe, you know, I kind of feel this way and I'm not sure if this is what, and I'm just like, I want a little more. You don't have to tell me something is definitively good or bad, but you can definitively tell me if you enjoyed it or you didn't enjoy it. And you can definitively and tell me why, you know, so you can be confident with what you're giving me. There just seemed to be kind of a through line of that through a lot of these reviews where when somebody was confident about what they were saying, it stood out. It was like, oh, they're actually giving an opinion and giving a review on something instead of just kind of hemming and hawing around.
Well, and in all of the reviewers' defense, this challenge was a movie you haven't seen. We're not asking you to review something that you're familiar with. So, you know, they picked a movie from that year and they just had to go with it. Like,
well, that's true. When I said maybe it wasn't the best choice, it's like, well, am I asking him to watch like 6 movies from the year?
Yeah, yeah. If they're like, I don't know what to say about this, I guess I'll watch another one. I could see how this challenge could be a little difficult in that regard.
Yeah, Aaron, the reason I really like what you just said, and I want to talk about it. The reason I immediately went to that place for, because you said it was kind of a minor point, was because I actually wrote that down as something of a positive, in that I appreciated that he was willing to come out and say when there was something that like he couldn't totally put his finger on, as opposed to making something up and pretending like he landed on something. Maybe that's a thing at that point to just leave out. I don't know. But yeah, Aaron, I think you're right. I think it is a modern review thing, and I'm not saying that's a good thing. I think we're in a place where, you know, especially on YouTube, where communities are so volatile in commenting and stuff.
I think that's it.
You get, because this is a trap I fall into too, having done this for as many years as I have, where I think subconsciously you get, you know, not to air out my dirty laundry or anything, but I think subconsciously it's easy to get to a place sometimes, especially with particular subject areas, especially when you're talking about something that could be that I don't know, that could be kind of a what's the word I'm looking for? Just problematic for people, where a lot of people are going to disagree with you, and like maybe you even know how you feel about it, but you're afraid I'm going to get a million comments of people screaming at me if I say this, and so I think it's really easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah,
I agree. In fact, you could probably look back through just this past year of reviews for me and find a handful of examples of me doing the same thing. I mean, it is a natural instinct, I think, sometimes to, when you know there's that vitriol waiting on the other side, to, you know, back off from things that you're not 100% sure of, you know, and to kind of couch stuff that way. So
yeah, and to overly qualify things, and absolutely, you know, feel the need to overly explain. So yeah, that's the thing I certainly sympathize with, but I don't want to you know, harp on it too much, especially since it was a minor point from Aaron in the first place, but an interesting thing. And I also want to mention that part of the reason, of course, that we do this show is because these kinds of these topics about pros and cons to certain ways of reviewing, and what I'm sorry, I'm losing myself. What an effective review is. Those kinds of conversations just naturally come out of this, and so we're making suggestions for everybody, and not just the person who's making the review. I like how I kind of like, with this particular subject matter, how dry and serious Jeffrey is. Although I'd like to see,
I like the black and white.
Yeah, that was a good idea. I don't know about the camera angle. I don't know that I needed that much ceiling, you know, but I think, and Jeffrey is a guy that I've actually met in person and have talked to some, and there are, like everyone, lots of sides to Jeffrey's personality, and this is not how he always comes at things. And I've seen him a lot lighter and jokier and even silly. And I think with this particular subject matter, this made a lot of sense. But I would, if Jeffrey doesn't win today and he comes back, I'd like to see some of those other kind of sides to his personality and see like what he does with other things that aren't as kind of dire as this picture was. Because I think that he's being as dry as he was could turn some people off if that was his natural demeanor always with whatever it was he was talking about. But I think it was appropriate for this. Do you agree with that, Aaron, or do you think you can use that all the time?
Ask the question again. What was the question?
Just I think Jeffrey's demeanor is pretty dry and no nonsense, and I wonder if that's just like a good idea with this particular material, or if he can get away with that kind of demeanor all the time.
I wouldn't try to do that kind of demeanor all the time. If you are, then I think you need to. If you're going to go for that kind of persona, I think you have to find other ways to liven up your material, whether it be, what you're shooting, whether it be titles that you're using, or, something to, because for me, it zones me out. If it's very dour like that. I had no inkling that he had that sense of humor that you're talking about. I've never seen anything, else that he's done. So it seemed very talk to the camera, straightforward. That was another common thing with these reviews that I'd say is, again, just because you're not putting in art from posters or stills from videos or whatever, doesn't mean you're not editing your video. Like so many of these were just turn it on, talk for 5 minutes, turn it off. And that's fine if you can nail it, but that's where a lot of those things that we're talking about are going to pop up, is during that, non-edited linear kind of review. So I'm not saying it's bad necessarily. It's just, it's unnecessary in some ways. You can still edit things. That's not, it's not one of the rules that you can't actually edit your video. So, there are ways to do that.
Yeah, we did that for one challenge 1 year, but it's not always like that. And that can be certainly an interesting exercise. But you've got to be really skilled and have a lot of experience to pull that off. And you've got to work, as you're saying, Aaron, so much harder to keep engaged and to keep the audience engaged, because you don't have that extra those extra visuals and media to fall back on. I would suggest that folks that aren't really confident already on camera and have a lot of that kind of experience, don't just talk for 5 minutes and then edit, because obviously you won't have enough of a review. Talk for 8 or 9 minutes and see what you can cut out, and then you'll be able to hit a lot more points and get a lot more done in your review. Because that was another thing that I was seeing a lot with, and some of the ones that we're not going to be actually talking about that we saw were, and some of the reason that they probably didn't make the top 3, there were videos where there was a lot of dead space for 5 minutes. And you get, like, I'm not saying that they weren't critical. You get maybe a good pro and a good con in there, but they wouldn't very often even be more kind of broad pros and cons. It would just be, there's this one thing that really bugged me, and then I don't have time anymore. The video's over. So yeah. I'm with Aaron. It's definitely a good idea to edit your video if you're not used to it.
And how about this? Make a plan. Make a plan for what
that's what I was going to say. Otherwise, you have to make sure that you got an outline and a plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
And scripted's not bad. It can be difficult to figure out what to do visually and what to put on camera when you do that. And like I said, we're accepting purely audio reviews, but you've also got to be really engaging with that. I mean, like if a purely audio review is going to make our top 3, we've got to, I would say we've got to feel like we're listening to a really engaging podcast for 5 minutes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Eric, you haven't got to talk a lot.
So I have one big negative, but I think a lot of that could be up to the 5 minute time limit.
Yeah, sure.
So I think he's a really engaging, good speaker. I felt like I needed more context for his review.
Yeah, I had that note.
I know that Andy Warhol exists, and I know some of the history with his philosophy on art, and that's the beginning and ending of what I really know about Andy Warhol outside of his actual art. There was a lot of names and stuff where I'm like, but who is that to Andy Warhol? Where like he would be explaining things, and I'm like, but I don't really know what's being talked about.
Yeah, I felt like I had to already be in that world to know what he was talking about.
Yeah, and there was a couple musical references.
And even if you're making a review that's just for people that are already familiar with some of the figures in the story, you still should provide some of that context to remind us and get us just to get us in the mood for it in the first place.
Yeah. There was a couple musical things here and there where I'm like, I think I know what he's talking about. And I know that Jeffrey knows music really well.
Yeah.
But I do not.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do not. And so there was that would be my big note for this review is context is king. And,
but not a good Star Trek episode.
Yeah.
But Eric, wouldn't you say that if you're gonna make a review about a documentary and about in a real specific wheelhouse, like a music documentary or about an artist or whatever it is, I think it's important to keep in mind that there might be people that would be interested in seeing this even if they're not also in that world, and that it can be also really educational experience, and it can tell us more about that period of time. And he talked about the period and how well it was captured. That might be a thing that would make someone that isn't already familiar with all that stuff want to watch this. So yeah, you've got to. I feel like his audience is really limited.
Well, and there's the big one is there's a point where he's talking about it's adapted from someone's personal diaries, and he was like, and because of that, this person's not there a lot, but I wish they were there more. And like, I don't know who any of these people are in relation to each other.
Yeah.
Because I don't know much about Andy Warhol.
And sometimes he did a good job of giving us that background midstream, like when he was talking about the book that this was partially based on. He did a decent job, I thought, of jumping in and giving us that background and then getting back to the critique. He didn't lose his review in the middle of telling us about that, but I still didn't know who the person was he was talking about. I also wish he would have talked more about the music, because that seemed to be one of the big accolades he was giving it. So he's like, the music's good, you need to buy this soundtrack. But it's important to remember that you could have a really good soundtrack and a really crappy movie, and those two things might not necessarily gel together. So what was it about the music that made the story more effective?
And did the music make the story more effective?
Yeah, exactly. And it's always important to remember that if you're reviewing something that is story-driven, that it's about telling a story. So everything is about whether or not those things are working in tandem to make that story more effective. Anything else you guys want to talk about with this one before we move on?
Nope, think I'm good.
Okay, cool. Let's Jeffrey, thanks a lot for giving us your review, and we're gonna go ahead and move on now to let's go ahead and go on to Gattaca. Just Tired, and I forget his real name. I think he said his first name, but I don't remember what it is now. But the channel is Just Tired, and he reviewed the film Gattaca, which I have to say I still have never seen.
I also have never seen it.
What?
Yeah, I know.
What?
Everyone says it's really boring, and I'm never in the mood for that.
It is not boring. It is definitely not boring.
I mean, they also say it's good.
We're stopping. Hold on. We're stopping right now. We're all going to go watch Gattaca, and then we're going to continue with this.
I thought we were going to have to.
I cannot believe neither of you have watched Gattaca. That's amazing.
We haven't. I really thought we were going to have to wait for a minute and listen to Aaron Dicer's review of Gattaca before we went on to Gattaca. All right, without further ado, a review that we've seen about a movie that we've not, that Aaron Dicer is apparently maybe not going to be friends with us anymore until we've seen. Let's go ahead and move on right now to Just Tired's Gattaca review.
Okay, so this is my Geekvolution Who Reviewed the Reviewers review submission thing, whatever. Now I'm reviewing the 1997 film Gattaca. Yes, 1997. I'm that young. I'm only 20. This movie is basically a box office bomb when it came out, but it's got quite a cult following to it.
Oh, I've got terrible hiccups, goddammit.
But Gattaca is essentially, it's a movie starring Ethan Hawke, Jude Law, and Uma Thurman, and it's basically a dystopian science fiction film about a biologically driven society, where societal identity, societal place, the way culture, everything is essentially shaped by eugenics and genes. And wait, eugenics and genes is the same thing, isn't it? And the movie is about Ethan Hawke, a guy who is like born with crappier genes. He and Jude Law is a guy with good genes, but he's a paraplegic now, but he doesn't want people to know that. So Ethan Hawke and Jude Law switch places, and it's a wacky hijinks of Ethan Hawke pretending to be Jude Law in the workplace as he falls in love with Uma Thurman. It's not actually. It's actually a really, really cold, melancholic film that takes its matter very, very seriously. It's a very classic sort of science fiction film in the sense that it takes a very, very specific sort of societal fear, a miasma of the time. Now, I would think it's a miasma of the time. I wasn't alive in 1997. I was just being born, so I guess maybe eugenics was a fear back then, but it takes that sort of a fear and it pushes it to the most sort of dramatized extreme to explore and stuff. And that's what this movie basically does. The movie touches upon basically two sociological topics, areas, because I like to look at things sociologically because it's fun, and basically it deals with fear, culture, and identity. Fear culture is a sociology perspective by a guy called Frank Furedi, and it basically is this idea that the thing that shapes society and dictates to people the way people act is determined by fear, some sort of fear force of fear. Back in the good old days, it was religion. It was this fear of I'm gonna act a certain way because religion says so, and God would kill me if I don't. Later on, it was the fear of economic collapse during the Great Depression, and then there was the fear of nuclear destruction during the Cold War. And I find it very, very interesting that in Gattaca, it's the fear of eugenics. One of the first scenes we see in the film, and it's really, really well done, it really got me going, is when Ethan Hawke is born. The parents, they go to the doctors, and the doctors are like, well, your baby, like, it's not, you know, judging from like the heart meter stuff, whatever, he's gonna live till he's like 30 or something, so he's, genetically speaking, he's not exactly spectacular. And then they have another child. The movie's kind of like a very, very serious dissection, investigation into how negatively science could impact the ways people, the attitudes of people, this sort of over-rationalization. That's one thing that the movie kind of deals with as a launching point, and then the movie pushes it to the context of identity. Obviously, Jude Law and Ethan Hawke, they swap places, so you've got this sort of discussion of identity worth. If society is shaped by eugenics, by genes and stuff, how would social mobility work? How would social class work? How could anything be worth? Like, the movie shows a bit at the beginning where we see barriers set up against Ethan Hawke, because Ethan Hawke wants to be an astronaut. He wants to go to space, and he's a janitor at like the space facility thingy, and he wants to be one of the people in the offices, and he can't. He's just a guy cleaning. When he swaps places, we see that sort of that barrier risen up. It's both an allegory and an exploration of how things are formed in terms of the social construction of society. It's very, very cool. While I loved the film, I really, really enjoyed it. It's ridiculously tight. There's a twist at the end that's really, really good, and it's food for thought. It's one of those movies where after I watched it, and I took a shower, not because the movie made me want to have a shower, because I was going to have one anyway. The whole time I was just sort of thinking and being like, oh, what is it saying? What is it doing? And I was happy that I was able to do that. So, okay, here are my negatives. My main negatives, one of the characters, I guess spoiler-ish, at the end has like a self-emancipation. He basically commits suicide. And the movie like plays it with this sort of weird, like sentimental, well, it's the natural end to this character. But it's really strange. And it was like, it instantly discombobulated me. I was like, this is so weird. I don't know, maybe there's some sort of symbolic depth that I'm maybe missing and need to like look. I don't know. It's a bit odd, and it left me with a very, very strange kind of feeling at the end. I'm running out of time now. I give it a 16 out of 10.
Eric, do you want to start us out with this one?
Sure. I'll start us out with this one. I thought that this was Just Tired, ironically, was the most kind of energetic and engaging of the bunch.
Yeah.
I thought he actually used a little bit of editing. where there's a couple of jump cuts to.
Oh, he used a lot of it. There's quite a bit of jump cuts.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's that kind of video, right? It's that rhythmic jump cutting.
But I wouldn't be surprised if he did do a longer review and cut it down, like you were suggesting the last one.
Clearly, what he did. Yeah.
I thought he made some really interesting points, and I never really knew what Gattaca was about, and now I do, and it sounds kind of interesting, and like it made me want to see the movie, which is good because he mostly liked the movie.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, no, I thought he did a really good job. There's a point that I really liked. That was just like a small joke, because obviously it's a movie from when he was born, and he goes, "This is dealing with issues from the time I think I'm not sure I wasn't there."
Yeah, he said, "I think it's a miasma,"
which I think is good because
an excellent word choice if the man's not scripted at all, right?
Yeah.
There was something that I was kind of impressed with.
It's like it was a joke, but it kind of felt like an insight that I don't often see, where it's like, yeah, I'm told that this is what was happening at this period of time, but I wasn't there. I have a sense of, I think, what was going on then, but I don't actually know.
But at the same time, it's also, I've never heard anybody talk about the fear of eugenics in the late 90s.
What are you talking about? The eugenics wars.
Right. That would be the fear of eugenics in a fictional history that didn't actually happen.
But yeah, I thought in 5 minutes he covered a lot of plot and themes and ideas of the film. So yeah, I was really impressed with this one.
Aaron?
Yeah, I was impressed as well. I think his sense of humor is very evident. I think he has a real understanding of his own personality. I think he may have a love it, hate it style. I loved it, but he has kind of this this random discombobulation to the way he presents his ideas. Like he'll do asides and those kind of things, and you're not sure when he's serious or when maybe he's not, except that you kind of know because you're kind of zoned in. Like it's a really interesting style that he has, and I enjoyed it. I'm not sure that everybody would connect to it that way. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it is just overall enjoyable.
I mean, I also really like that.
But I appreciate that he has a style. And I mean, like, I don't want to say it's great just because there's a style, but a lot of the reviews that we looked at this week felt there would be some decent material there, but it wouldn't necessarily stand out. You'd be like, I don't see this person running a channel trying to get any traction if this is what they made every week. And I didn't have that with this guy.
An example I can think of right off the bat is when he's talking about, kind of setting up. His structure was fairly decent. He talked about what the movie was, which I think is important to do give that context of what's going on. And he talked about what he liked about it and what he didn't. As he was telling about what it was about, he started to go into how it was this crazy romp between, Jude Law and blah, blah, and then he cut and he was like, no, actually, it's really cold and melancholic. I'm like, that's perfect because that is giving you exactly what you need to know about this movie. There is no, playful romp to it. It is a very melancholy type movie. So he using his humor in a way to actually give you good information about what to expect with the movie, what, those kind of things, I thought was really good. I liked the remarks he had. I thought that they expressed the movie well. His positives, talking about it being tight and thoughtful, the negatives, I thought his main negative was really interesting, talking about the suicide and how that played strangely to him in the movie. I thought was really interesting.
Oh, is that how the movie ends? Because he doesn't say how it ends. He just says he wasn't sure about it.
No. I wasn't saying that's how the movie ends either. I'm just saying that was, when he was mentioning that, that was one of those things that I thought was important.
Well, did he sneak in a major spoiler without a person not knowing the movie in a way that we wouldn't know as a spoiler? Because that's impressive.
Yeah, possibly.
Like if that's actually how, if that's that's a really cool thing. If that's actually how the movie ends, because we wouldn't go in and watch it and say, oh, we spoiled the ending for us, because we know that happened somewhere, but you wouldn't know where.
Yeah. But he specifically didn't spoil the
ending. If he did it on purpose,
yeah.
That's really impressive. If it's an accident, I mean, like, that's neat. But if he intentionally did that, I've never seen that. That's pretty cool.
Well, I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to tell you. So you'll have to watch it to find out.
Maybe Aaron Dicer can make us watch Gattaca.
Yeah. Our new program, Aaron Dicer Makes Us Watch.
That's right.
Everyone's making us watch things. Why not Aaron Dicer as well?
That's right.
Apparently, Aaron has seen all the important movies.
For a $20 donation, you can make us watch
Gattaca. Yeah, no.
Gattaca is in my top 100 movies of all time. So
he's not going to do that. He's going to come to my house and he's
what
going
is
to
it around? What's around Gattaca in your top 100?
I'd have to look. I think it's somewhere in the 70s. So I'd have to pull it up and.
But like, what are the other films you think are on par with Gattaca?
I would have to look to know for sure. Probably Wreck-It Ralph is around there somewhere.
Wreck-It Ralph's on your top 100?
Yeah, man.
That's a good movie, but wow, that's cool.
That's a good movie, but what? But period. It's a good movie.
No, it is. I wouldn't think to put it on a top 100 list. That's all I'm saying. Top 100. No, you're right, though. I did just trail that off so that I didn't make... It's like what we were talking about earlier, where it can be difficult on the internet to be assertive because you know that the person on the other end it doesn't necessarily agree with what you're saying, and so you go, should I say that or should I just leave it alone? Sometimes that can be... No, assertiveness is important in a review. Aaron, what else do you have, man?
That was pretty much it. I thought he did a really great job. The only negative could possibly be his style, his personality could grate on you. I don't know. It didn't on me. I was just ever so slightly annoyed at the joke rating at the end. Like, I like an actual rating as opposed to a joke rating. But I got it and I thought it was funny. But at the same time, there was part of me who's like, but really, what's the rating? but really, what do you think?
Well, especially because it had such a good sense of structure anyway that you were kind of waiting for that. It felt like the kind of review that he would like, because he doesn't actually have a lot of other summary. And when you have of his own review, right? So you'll often and especially a short review with a little bit of summation of what you're talking about. That's your kind of old school high school essay format, and that's kind of the easiest and the most palatable way to put together a thing like this. And so when you don't have that, the easiest way to kind of feel like that's there and to give us a little bit of a summation is to give a score at the end. And I'm with you. I was kind of expecting him to be like, no, but really here's my score, because he does a lot of that where he's like, here's my, but really.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of this, but that would be good advice to all of the reviewers that entered, anyone that wants to enter moving forward. If you're going to do a review in 5 minutes, busting out the high school, middle school breakdown of how to write an essay might not be a bad idea.
Give me a thesis statement. And that's not the only way to do it. Don't get me wrong.
But in a 5 minute, that might be a good structured a good easy structured way.
But
however, you said that on the contest before.
But however you do it, find a way to structure your review. It gives the person who's listening or watching, it gives us the ability to hang on with you. It gives us something to hold on to. We know where we're at. We know what you're talking about. We're with you. When there's no structure, we're kind of flailing. We're trying to figure out, wait, where are we now? What are we talking about now? So just some, sort of structure that gives us the context we need to, understand what you're talking about.
And then stand out with a bit of personality and some flair, which Just Tired has. I think it's important to note that he doesn't feel the need, and I'm not saying that this didn't entirely work with Jeffrey's review, and not to compare them too much, but with this one, he's not using at all the kind of flavor and style of the film in order to review the movie, and yet I got a very good sense of what the tone of the film probably is, even as he's talking about it with his own kind of more bouncy, a little bit flamboyant style. The jump cut thing I used to kind of resist just because it felt really gimmicky and stylish in what everyone was doing at one point. And I think these days there's a lot of different ways that people make YouTube videos, and that seems to be just one of a lot of different ways. It's weird. It's gotten to a place now where I'm not immediately like, oh, you're just trying to look like everybody else.
Well,
now.
There's almost a self-awareness with jump cuts at this point where people know it's a thing that people do, and it's very intentional as opposed to just this is how you make a YouTube video, which is what it kind of used to be, I think.
Well, I'll also say it wasn't just straight jump cuts that he used in his editing as well. He was creative with how he was cutting from one thing to another. There's a difference between a straight just cut, you know,
right.
kind of thing. He used zoom cuts, which I think are a little less obnoxious because they feel, you know, like it could have actually been a natural camera switch.
Yeah.
You know, so he uses some of those different kinds of things so that he
used filters.
Yeah,
but he didn't go crazy with the filters, and usually it was for the sake of a gag or something, where he would use a filter to either tell you, like, don't take this part seriously, or even just to say, like, you're only going to see this for about 4 seconds. It seemed like he would go to filters a lot when it was a real short shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that style a lot. I would love to know if this guy made, and I didn't check his channel. I don't know if he's making other reviews, but if he's made other reviews before, or if he made more after this, I'd love to know if this is the style he usually would use, or if he went with this because he was because he would usually use footage or stills or something, but because we're not letting him do that in this contest, he was smart enough to think, okay, I need something, so how am I going to keep the audience engaged? And I don't want to say that he is one of the better reviews this time just because he has some polish, just because he's editing his material, because he could have been really, really boring and uninteresting. And if the material wasn't there, you know, if he didn't get as much done as he did in 5 minutes, that
well, the editing with the delivery
is impressive. Yeah,
it feels confident.
Yeah,
I think this might be the most confident feeling of all of the videos that we got.
Yeah, I think so too. But of course, you know, you've certainly got to have substance.
Yeah, yeah.
And that rhythm certainly helped him get as much done as he did. But anyway, so I'll go down a few other things, a few other notes. So I like that he spends the first 30 seconds in giving us the title, and like he doesn't even get into summary until about 30 seconds in, and that's pretty much just to say, hey, I'm this person, I'm making a review, and here's the name of the movie. But in that 30 seconds, we get everything we need to know about his style and his personality, and I'm already comfortable with him as he gets into the actual meat of the thing. And I liked that a lot. I liked the summary. He gives us a little bit of analysis, and then he gets right into his critique. But he's also really good, I think, throughout at giving us getting summary in when it's necessary. So he gives us that kind of brief log line. Here's what the movie is. And then as he goes along, he's giving us the details we need to understand what the criticism is. So you'll see a lot of reviews that, and a lot of written reviews still do this, where you'll get all that summary out in like 4 or 5 paragraphs sometimes, and then all the criticism right at the end. And so, like, I'm expected to remember all the stuff that happened and a thing that I've not seen, and then understand why you're telling me what you liked and what you didn't like about it. This is much more effective, much more engaging, and it's easier for me to keep up with what he's talking about. And it's the way I tend to try to write too, where you and I don't know, I mean, he was clearly organized. I don't know how much of the stuff he said was actually written and how much of it was off the cuff, and he just had an outline he was going with. I suspect it was more that, and he ends up doing a lot of kind of fun off the cuff stuff in doing it that way, if that's what he's doing. So I'm sure some of the funnier things that he does are probably things he came up with in the moment, is my guess. But that's the thing I try to do as well, in at least my scripted stuff, where you give a little bit up front, here's what the movie's about, and then as you're going along, more and more details come out, because that's how you give us the context for what you're talking about. He's got really good historical perspective, like with what you were talking about with Were We Afraid of Eugenics in the 90s. And I also really appreciate all of the personal interest and expertise that he brings to this, where he doesn't lose me in talking about the sociological stuff, and that's also a big selling point for the movie. So he's not just saying, I'm telling you about the sociological stuff because that's what I'm interested in. It doesn't feel self-indulgent. It feels like he's giving us that analysis and that breakdown as an accolade, as one of the big positives of the thing. And me being an analysis guy, I was really impressed that he managed to make a review for a person that's not seen this and still get some analysis in there. And that analysis, you know, the thematic stuff that the movie's about, was a lot of what made me want to actually go watch it. My main criticism actually is that he runs out of time. You get to the end, and he says, here's my big positives, and then he's like, I'm going to do some negatives, and it's interesting, and it's not like a tiny throwaway, not important negative, but he makes it sound like this is a section, like he's gonna talk about some things that he didn't care for about this movie. And he's got that one thing, and then he's like, "Whoops, I'm out of time," and then here's my fake rating, and then he gets out. That was my main negative. But that's everything I have. So anything else anybody want to say about this one before we move on? Anything you want to rebut about anything I said?
I have Gattaca at number 49 on my top 100 of all time. It is surrounded by Braveheart, Minority Report, and The Fifth Element.
So wow, that's interesting because Minority Report and Fifth Element are similar.
And that's all science fiction stuff.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're similar science fiction. Obviously, Fifth Element, I would imagine, is not the same.
And then Hitchcock's The Rope is after that.
Oh, I love Rope. Okay, Rope I've seen.
I am surprised Braveheart's that high, though.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, not to review Braveheart, but I'm surprised it's that high.
Now we're going to get Eric's concise 5-minute review of Braveheart.
Historically inaccurate.
And this concludes Eric's review. I gave you a whole 5 minute. Just, it's really important to use your time wisely. You've got that canvas. Okay.
And long.
We're gonna go on now to the last review we're going to talk about today, which is from Mr. Eli Mack, who discussed Tu Wong Fu, and away we go. Here comes his review.
1995 was a very interesting year for movies. Disney was destroying the box office with Toy Story sitting at the top and Pocahontas sitting somewhere in the middle. Also, the year saw the release of Batman Forever and Die Hard with a Vengeance to complete their movie trilogies. Also, James Bond made his iconic return to the silver screen in GoldenEye. However, there was one film that starred 3 actors in unexpected roles. Hello, my name is Eli McKegg, and the movie I'm going to be talking about today is Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. The movie stars Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, and John Leguizamo as 3 drag queens from New York that get stuck in the small town of Snydersville while trying to make it to California for the Miss Drag Queen of America pageant. Now, the movie has a very simple premise. That 2 drag queens win a tournament, and they go across on a road trip while taking their young protege, played by John Leguizamo, but the car breaks down in this small town of Snydersville, and they are forced to wait days before their car even gets back to work. Now, you would think such a premise would be very strange for 3 actors such as these, but no, they take it and they run with it. And it's a very funny turn that they have. As you watch it, you forget that Patrick Swayze even is a straight male. He has all the nuances of a actual drag queen, and even changes his voice to fit the role that he has. And instead of just playing it as a full-on comedy that you could possibly do and over-exaggerate what you do in your mannerisms and your voice, Patrick Swayze plays the role straight, as he is sort of the main lead of the film, and all the nuances that he has with the simple way that he holds his wrist and the way he says certain words. It shows that he really did do a lot of work in research to make sure that this role was what it should be and taken seriously. Wesley Snipes is the funny one, though. He is, though not the funniest in the movie, he is still able to deliver a great performance, to the point where I forgot that Wesley Snipes was even remotely an action star. It got to the point where I forgot that this was even Wesley Snipes, and to be honest, I didn't think of him as Wesley Snipes, the manly man action star. No, I thought of him as Wesley Snipes, the drag queen, and that's how funny he was with the performance. And though he played sort of the stereotypical character and how you would stereotypically play it, he was able to make the role fit with the film and with the story that was being played, and I thought that he delivered a great performance. John Leguizamo was the weakest of the 3, I must admit. But though he was the weakest, he still delivered a great performance with his role because he was playing the more younger of the three characters. And though he also played the stereotype very heavily, he was the Latina, hola loca chicha, that's sort of the character that he played. And though it was a stereotype, he still made it work with his character. And all three of them combined with Patrick Swayze playing the straight character, as in playing it serious, Wesley Snipes playing a little bit of a stereotype, and John Leguizamo also playing the stereotype. You had a great performance, and the three had great chemistry together with Wesley Snipes and Patrick Swayze's character knowing each other from the past, but nonetheless, it was still a great performance. Overall, the plot was a little weak in certain points where you were just thinking to yourself, okay, I want to progress the story. I don't like that they were constantly banging me against the head of, oh, get it? The three people are gay. They are drag queens. Ha ha ha. Get it? Get it? You need to learn how to not use this as a platform to not like these people. No, that was getting annoying throughout some of the movie, especially with the actor Chris Penn's character, who was the sheriff, that was vehemently against gay people. But throughout the entire movie, I occasionally would forget about that with the supporting cast in the small town, because they ignored the fact that these were three men dressed as females. They used it as these were just three females. But in the end, the film was a very hysterical film. I thought to myself, I love what this movie is doing. I want to see more. So overall, I give this film a 1 thumb up, and you should most definitely see it. And if you want to watch more, just subscribe to Mr. Eli Mack on YouTube. Thank you so much. I'm Eli McKegg, and that was Too Long Food. Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar.
Aaron, I'm going to have you start us off with this one as well, just because I just got finished doing a whole lot of talking. So
sure.
Why don't you start us off, and we'll have some interaction. What did you think of this one?
I'm going to start off with my biggest positive about this review. Yeah. It is the best structured review I saw in any of the ones that came in, from my opinion.
Ooh, really? I don't know if I agree with that compared to the last one. I think they're pretty close.
I think this is a better structured review than that last one.
Wow, okay, go ahead.
I think you can hang your hat on what he's doing in this review in a really good way. He gives an intro, he gives a description, he does pros, he does cons, and he does a close, although he short shrifts his close a little bit, again, because I think of the time thing. I think that's bound to happen. I really like his energy. I like his expressiveness. He seemed to enjoy giving us the material. One of the reasons I think his structure was actually so prominent or so tight is I think he actually went off of a script for some part. And so I think he knew exactly where he was going. So I appreciated that. As far as negatives go, with his pros and cons, they didn't seem very deep to me. He really got caught up on the performances for the pros. I mean, basically his entire pros section was just listing the cast and saying they did a good job at, portraying a woman when they're a man. That was basically his, going through the, the three main characters. I wanted more. I wanted to know more of, why he liked it, why he enjoyed it, what was good about it, other than the fact that those three are giving, kind of out of character, performances. So that would probably be my negative. It's just that even though he did have pros and cons, they were pretty shallow. They felt pretty shallow to me. The other negative would be, and it's, again, it doesn't have to be a negative other than, you can spice things up with something here or there. It was just, again, turn the camera on, turn the camera off. There wasn't, a lot of anything to, keep attention other than the words he was saying. So there was that as well.
Yeah, and I completely understand why some folks are doing it that way, because I said what matters most for this particular contest is substance, but I also said delivery and engagement, and what you do with, especially if you're on camera, what you do with your visuals and with your editing can help keep us engaged, as we were talking about earlier. And I do think you have to work that much harder if you're not on camera at all. But then if you do a scripted review like this, it would almost be easier for him, I think, to keep me engaged if he wasn't on camera, just because. And I'm not saying he shouldn't be. He just needs to think more about that. He's going to have to compensate because.
Yeah, I don't know that he was full scripted. I feel like he was outlined.
No, I agree with you. I think that's right. I think he wanted to be, though.
His points and making sure he was going to the next point.
The sense I got was he would have been more confident if he was 100% scripted, and he wasn't, because this is just my guess. Obviously, I don't know, but my guess, because this is a thing I've not seen a lot. I was a little bit confused about this. He has an opening that is completely scripted, and then he gets off book, and I wondered about that. I wondered if he wrote his entire review out and he wasn't. And he was maybe a little bit nervous at the beginning, or he wasn't completely confident with that he would remember everything he wanted to say with his introduction, and then he got looser as he went along. I don't know, or if for some reason he simply wrote his introduction and outlined the rest and didn't write the rest of it. I'm not sure, but
I think he wrote the bookends. I think he wrote the close too. I think he wanted to start and end strong, and so I think he wrote the bookends and outlined the middle. That's my guess.
Yeah, it's just the sense I got was that because those are well written, they're fine. The sense I got was maybe he would have been more comfortable if he was fully scripted, but he was worried that being on camera, it would be too distracting, or he would just lose points with us if he was looking down the whole time. And so he didn't do that. Because even during his intro, he tried to look up a couple times, but he didn't have it fully memorized. I'm not saying that he should have written it all out and memorized it, and I'm not saying that he should have gone off book, but it would have been less distracting, I think, if even writing the front and the back, if maybe he had just memorized those parts, and then was looking at us and staying engaged with us the whole time. But like Aaron was saying with other reviews earlier, I think it would have been a better idea to simply have some editing, do some transitions, and then maybe memorize small sections. If you're wanting to script it, I don't know, Aaron. If it's necessary, I mean, it depends on the person. Like I don't know if it's necessarily a great idea. I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is I don't know if I would suggest to a person write portions of your review, but do the rest of it off the cuff. I guess if I don't notice it, it's not a bad idea. But I noticed it.
I think what you want to do ideally is figure out who you are and what you're best at, right? Exactly. Like what you want to do ideally is figure out, am I best off the cuff, or am I best scripted, or am I best outlined? So I think once you're able to figure that out, if you're honest with yourself and you get good feedback, then you just pursue that.
And I think he's good outlined. I mean, like I said, his scripting stuff's fine. I think 3 or 4 more takes, and he probably would have started talking about things that were a little bit deeper, a little bit more interesting than what we got here, because he doesn't hem and haw real hard. There's not a lot of dead air. He seems to get his bearings pretty easily. The issue was once he got onto a particular topic, he got really comfortable with it, and that became the review. So I don't know that he sat down and said, unless that stuff was all outlined. I kind of think that maybe he had more stuff written down that he didn't end up getting to. I would be surprised if I were to look at his outline and it was, and then I'm going to talk about the performances, and he didn't have any story stuff at all. But but maybe that's what he really wanted to focus on, and it didn't occur to him to talk about more of the story and what the film was actually about, which obviously is more important to me. Like what he had to say about the performances was fine, and it made it sound like, I guess, an interesting enough movie for someone that appeals to. Like, I got a good sense of whether or not I would want to see this movie, and so that's good. I mean, he achieves that. But yeah, I didn't know enough about what the film was about, and one thing that irked me was I didn't know. I had to look it up. I didn't know what the title was about. I didn't know why Julie Newmar was in the title, and when I first saw the title for the review, I assumed that he picked a movie that had Julie Newmar in it because he's making a thing for Geekvolution and he knows that I'm a huge Simpsons Batman fan. And then I listened to this review and I'm like, Julie Newmar's never brought up except in the title. I don't even. So I had to go look at it. And what it is they have a picture of her, and they're like starstruck and obsessed with her. And
so you've never seen Tu Wong Fu either?
I haven't.
Okay. So I also haven't seen it, but I've had sitting on my shelf. Is that on
your top 100?
I have it sitting on my shelf for about 6 months. A friend of mine lent it to me and was like, "You have to watch this," and I've been meaning to get around to it.
No, I hadn't seen it until recently. Last year, actually, one of my patrons, one of their perks is they get to have me review a movie for them or whatever, and they picked that for their movie. So that was my first time seeing it. It's a great film. I mean, it's really
my mother
well
also loves the film.
That's how Eric and I see a whole lot of things that we've never seen before. And if somebody would like to make us watch Gattaca, go to patreon.com/Geekvolution and go to the tier. Eric, what did you think of this review, man?
So kind of echoing what you just said. My biggest pro and con are very right next to each other, which is I think he does a great job describing the performances. What works really well and is really impressive is that he goes down the 3 lead actors. And I don't feel like he's repeating himself, even though he's kind of saying a similar thing of they're doing a really good job playing what they're not. And they make you forget that they're who they are. But I felt like each time he covered the 3 different actors, he was distinct enough that I didn't feel like he was repeating himself. But I also had no sense of what the movie was about. And if it was...
Yeah, I got a sense of tone before I got a sense of what the story was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, if it's one of those movies like I would recommend Split to somebody based entirely on his performance. That is, in fact, the only reason I recommend it to. I'm like, yeah, it's an okay movie, but it's an amazing performance. I need some kind of caveat of whether he actually liked the movie or not, or whether he was just really blown away by the performances. I didn't get a good enough sense of how he felt about the movie overall, other than how incredible he thought all the actors were.
Because he did say there's not enough going on in the plot. He gives us that at the end, but he doesn't actually give us enough of what the story is. So I get a sense that maybe it's too typical of a comedy.
Yeah.
And maybe it's kind of too situation comedy. The sense I got from what he was saying, and I've not seen the movie, was that he thought that it's basically just here's the situation and wacky hijinks, and he sounded frustrated waiting. He said waiting for the story to progress. And so maybe part of the reason he doesn't talk a lot about story is because he doesn't think there's a lot there. But yeah, again, he gives us that log line, but not quite enough of summary, which is weird. I don't usually find myself complaining that much about lack of summary. More often, a newer reviewer will just sit down and for 5 minutes tell you what the story's about. We didn't have that at all. We didn't have anybody that just told us what the story was.
No.
But yeah, that was my big thing with it. I was like, I think you did a really good job telling me about the actors, but I thought the rest of it was kind of lacking around that.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
Guys, perspective is very important when you're making a review. Once again, purpose, knowing who the review is for, but also, especially if it's for a group that's never seen the thing before, you don't want to be self-indulgent. You don't want to just launch right in. We had a couple of these this time too, where somebody would immediately just start talking about the thing. Like their feelings as if I had been sitting next to them, and I don't know the movie. I don't know what you're talking about, and so that context is really, really important. What else?
It is for kings.
Yes, absolutely. He touched a little bit on how movies like this can sometimes be kind of pandery and preachy, and I appreciated the fact that he was willing to go there and talk about that. I wish he had elaborated more, and that wasn't just an aside, but I like that. I like that he talked about that, because that can be sometimes kind of a controversial thing, where you'll have people who want that kind of thing because they agree with it, and they're like, no, it should be I resist that. I don't think that's good storytelling. I appreciated the fact, and not just because I agree with it, I appreciate the fact that he wasn't afraid of that, and he talked about it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Agreed.
What else, guys?
I've said my piece.
Yeah, as well.
Have you as well? All right, cool. Let's go ahead and... Oh, the last thing I wanted to say about this, because I just noticed this note and forgot about it. He kept talking about stereotyping, and I wasn't sure if that was a problem or not.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah, I also didn't get a great sense.
There were there were places where he would talk about how the performances with a particular character were stereotyping like a drag queen, but he'd be like, but it was still effective. I'm like, why? Like, I wasn't sure if he ever minded that it was a stereotype or not. And there were a couple of
he kind of played both sides of that in some ways, so you were never sure where he really stood on whether that was a negative or a positive.
And you said he didn't repeat himself too much. Idea-wise, that's true. He got stuck on a couple words. He couldn't stop saying nuance, and he couldn't stop saying role. And that started to get a little bit distracting to me. And that's if you find yourself doing that, and I tend to go the other way, where I'm so conscious of it that I'll avoid words where that's pretty much the word, like just because I said it like 5 minutes ago. So you go too far the other way. But I think it's if you find yourself doing that a lot, maybe I like just more outlining, have more of a sense of what you're going to say before you get into it. Guys, let's go ahead now and go into Top Banana. The way we're structuring the show this year, we're not doing vote-offs because, as I said earlier, everybody can enter at any time unless you win one. So Top Banana is the important thing now. This is going to be really nice for us as the judges pool, because we don't have to feel bad about throwing people out anymore. And so I guess that'll be kind of nice for us, although we'll see how well this goes. We might eventually, I was talking to Aaron about this earlier, Eric and Aaron, we might eventually find ourselves, if we don't get a whole lot of takers this year, trying to find a way to bring back the older format and just having a much smaller group and still doing it kind of once a month. So we're talking about different things, but this season we're going to keep going this way with it. And so we're going to do a Top Banana right now, and that whoever wins, that person is going to go to the final round after we do 6. Eric, who would you like to try to send to the Banana Bunch?
It's going to be Just Hired for Gattaca. I thought Gattaca. Gattaca.
Gattaca's a different thing.
I just thought it was the most confident and most kind of well done and well done of them. I thought it was the best of the bunch. Not the Banana Bunch, a different bunch.
Because we don't have that yet. That's later. Yeah. Eric likes his reviews well done. Some people are more medium rare folks when it comes to reviews. Aaron, what is
I have to go with the review that I would say is a miasma of our time. I'm going to go with the Gattaca review as well.
And because you're there.
That's right. I lived through it. I was actually fairly old during that time. So out of high school even. Imagine that.
Yeah, Aaron, some of these folks maybe feel really old, but I can only imagine how you feel.
Thanks. No, I appreciate that.
Sure.
We're very far apart, I'm sure.
It is unanimous this time. I'm also going to go with Gattaca for all the reasons we discussed earlier. He was incredibly engaging. I want to see more from him. He was really fun, but also I was impressed with how much he was able to get done in just 5 minutes. So obviously, when you just have 3 people, if 2 people agree right away, it becomes really clear who's going to win right off, and that's what happened this time. We decided to go with just 3 judges this time instead of 5 because the deliberations used to run like 3 hours long, and this is already longer than I thought it would be, so I think it was probably smart this year to drop it down a little bit. We're going to have a rotating panel of guest judges, so Eric and I are going to be here each time, but sometimes it'll be Aaron, sometimes it'll be somebody else, and next time, Eric, and we will, if he's available, probably bring Aaron back right the very next one. That's a great sentence. The very next review, if Aaron's available, we'll probably bring back. But the one next month, we're gonna bring in Jackson Rasco to guest host because he has never done one of these, and he got, of course, pretty far in. I want to say the year that Aaron judged. Yeah.
Yeah, it was season 4, I think.
Yep. And he's, of course, worked with us a lot and used to be part of the 7. And I've always wanted to see him judge one of these. So we're going to have Rasco next time. And then probably Aaron right after that if he is available and would like to do it. Aaron, thanks so much for joining us, man. We sure appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I literally came back from the dead for it. So why I'm here.
Oh man, I'm so glad to be speaking to you right now.
No, thank you. It's absolutely an honor. I've always appreciated your support of what I do long before anybody else was supporting your movie friend and what goes on there. You know, back when I had 100 subscribers, you were one of them. So I've always appreciated your support of what I do and letting other people know. So yeah, anytime I can help.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Obviously, and thanks for all the stuff you've done for us, of course. And Aaron's been on the channel. It's been a long time, but Aaron and I used to do a lot more stuff together. And if you go back and watch the pilot review for Gotham, that's me and Aaron. Aaron was in town, and we did that one live together. And Eric and I have reviewed a lot of Gotham since then, and turned into a very different thing. And
yeah.
But yeah, Aaron, I've always been jealous of Aaron because he is the opposite of me with reviewing, in that he does this concise radio show thing and can get like a million ideas in 2 minutes, and I don't know how he does that. And I feel like I have to talk for about 5 minutes before I even know what I'm talking about. So yeah, Aaron is one of the best channels for the kinds of reviews that we're having our contestants do right now. And down the road, it might be nice to do a challenge with like a longer, maybe 10-minute review that's a little bit more about analysis. But for the most part, these things tend to be a little bit more about being concise and getting your thoughts out in a more truncated manner, mostly just for the sake of time, if nothing else. But and to get people engaged and used to. I think it's important to note that unless you, because obviously we make these really insanely long videos all the time, and I think it's important to note that unless you already have an audience that is familiar with you and kind of loyal and likes being there, likes your personality, it's really hard to get away with that. And it was a long time before I was willing to make videos that long.
When you and I both started with the 10-minute cutoff on YouTube.
Yeah, we were used to that. And a lot of people coming down, they're like, oh, the sky's the limit, and like you get better because of those limitations. And it's like that with everything. So Eric came up with the challenge for next time, and it's going to be another 5-minute challenge. Eric, why don't you talk a little bit about the challenge we're going to do next time?
All right, so the challenge for next time is to review something that you like a lot and most people don't like, and go to bat for it. Tell me critically why you really like this thing. I think it should be things that really are disliked, not decisive.
Divisive.
Divisive.
And I mean, like, that can be a little bit subjective, I guess, but
like, I'm thinking things like, you and I both love The Spirit. There was no divisiveness unless people don't like The Spirit. Don't do something like Dark Knight Rises where like it's really kind of two camps. Find something you really like that a lot of people don't like, and it does not have to be movies. It can be an album, it can be a comic, it can be
a video
game show, a video game.
If you love Sonic 06, that should be your choice.
You love Heroes after season 1.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just tell me why this thing is valid, or why you think it's valid, or why you think it works, and
or why, and make sure to be as objective as humanly possible. And obviously, these things are subjective.
Yeah, maybe looking at it critically,
objective
you realize
in the sense that you're critical, right?
Yeah.
If it's a complete taste issue and you understand that, get us into your head a little bit.
Yeah, and
tell us like why you get that no one else likes it, but why it's speaking to you and you alone.
Yeah.
Aaron, any questions about that or anything you'd like to add?
No, I like that. That's good. I've been racking my brain for what mine would be, and I haven't come up with anything yet. So
me neither. I did mine already. It was The Spirit. That's a great challenge. I'm excited about that. We've never done that one. I don't remember. But I'm excited to see what people come up with. Yeah. And I really wanted to make sure and do a more open-ended one this time that wasn't just movies. So if you don't like reviewing films, this might be the challenge for you. Anyway, thanks again for watching, everybody. We sure appreciate it. Thanks once again to Aaron Dicer. And thank you, Eric, I guess. I mean, like,
here.
You live here. You were going to be here anyway. But I sure appreciate it. And I'm just kidding. In the meantime, everybody, we'll see you again in 1 month. The deadline for the next challenge is Tuesday, May 8th. So you have exactly 3 weeks. And thanks again for watching. I'm Captain Logan. This was Eric Holden and Aaron Dicer.
That's me.
See you later, folks.